Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt. My guest is United States Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas. Good morning, Senator Cotton. Welcome.
Good morning, Hugh. It's good to be on with you.
You know, we have created, since you're always in the car and we can't put you on camera, we have created a new B-roll of you over at the Salem sent me B-roll. And they said, whenever you talk to Senator Cotton, show this B-roll. And I'm sure Jacob is running around trying now to put it up on the Salem News Channel. I'm not sure what we have in that B-roll. I really have no idea. It could be very flattering or it could be terrible. What do you think? What do you think we grabbed for our B-roll?
I suspect if you're in charge of it, it's not very flattering. But if anyone on your very fine staff who helps keep this program afloat somehow, I'm sure it's great.
Well, before long, we'll be running it, and people who are watching on the Salem News Channel will be able to see it. Go find it, Jacob. Senator Cotton, I want to start with the biggest story of the week, the month, and the year. Xi and Putin together again in Moscow. Now, the Pact of Steel didn't come around until 1938, and Mussolini and Hitler started getting around together in the mid-30s. How ominous is that gathering and the cementing of that alliance in your eyes?
Well, it's very worrisome, Hugh. I want to be clear. Joe Biden didn't bring these two together. They are anti-American dictators who want to overturn an American-led global order of security and stability that serves our interests and replace it with one that serves their interests. However, Joe Biden's weakness in his first 2 years in office have created what they see as new opportunities for advancing their shared interests, whether it was the appeasement of China and Russia both early in the administration, the fiasco in Afghanistan, or now Joe Biden's halting half measures in Ukraine. Time and again, Joe Biden has encouraged these two anti-American dictators to act on their long shared interests in undermining America's national security and the global order that advances America's interests as opposed to the anti-American interest of countries like China and Russia and others.
Now, I add Iran in as part of the terrible three, but I think Beijing is the capital of this. There has been a debate inside the Republican Party. Too much weight is being put on your friend Ron DeSantis' use of the term territorial dispute, which may have been inartful, but was hardly a policy statement. You're friends with everyone in the Republican Party. You are the Hawk's hawk. What are you telling everyone, left, right, and center in the Republican Party? Isolationist to full-on Iraq war invasion was a good idea. What are you telling them all about right now?
The right now is a very dangerous moment, in part because so many of our friends around the world question whether or not America will uphold our security commitments, will defend our interests, as opposed to continuing to appease and conciliate and kowtow to Beijing in particular, but also adversaries as well. Like you mentioned, Iran. I was just in the region last month, and there are serious questions about whether America will not only defend our friends in the region, but even defend ourselves. If you look at the number of attacks that have been launched against Americans who are in places like Iraq, for instance, by Iran, without any retaliation for those Iranian provocations. So you see cases where not only anti-American dictators are coming together to forge stronger partnerships to undermine America's interests, but even friendly nations like Saudi Arabia have normalized their diplomatic relations with Iran for the first time since 2016 in a deal that was brokered by Beijing. It's pretty remarkable that we came out of President Trump's administration hoping for a peace deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia, and what we got was a diplomatic normalization between Iran and Saudi Arabia brokered by China.
Yeah, it's very bad news, and that passed almost unremarked upon, and it suggests a fraying of our traditional pillar in the Middle East, Israel and Saudi Arabia, backed up by UAE and other friendly countries. Senator Cotton, in terms of you're a lawyer and you're on the Judiciary Committee, when you see Americans lecturing Israelis on what to do with their court system, do you respond as I do, which is it's none of our business? That's a domestic issue. We should not be hectoring them on either way. But if you're going to hector, at least be consistent with your position taken in the United States. And the left is not doing that.
No, Hugh, again, I was in Israel last month. I was very clear about this at the time. I'm entirely confident that Israelis of all political persuasions can manage their own domestic affairs. They don't need the help of America to manage their own domestic affairs. They do need the help of America, however, to help broker peace agreements with their Arab neighbors, as we saw with the Abraham Accords under President Trump. They do need help to counteract the common terrorist threat that threatens both our nations, and they certainly need help to counteract the Iranian nuclear threat. That's what Israel needs America's help to do. They don't need American politicians meddling in their own domestic affairs. I will point out, however, that you are correct, that the Democrats who are lecturing Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition are saying the exact opposite about our Supreme Court and our court systems. Or for that matter, they are totally quiet when, for instance, Emmanuel Macron uses emergency powers to bypass his legislature after it rejected his pension reform bill and unilaterally impose it on the French people. And you have massive strikes and massive protests all across France. Yet where is Joe Biden? Where are liberal Democrats protesting Emmanuel Macron, supporting the workers in France? Again, I have no opinion on pension reform in France. I'm confident the French can manage their own internal affairs. However, it's just another example of the double standard that liberals apply to Israel and to no other nation.
The progressive critique of Benjamin Netanyahu, it's so maddening to me, not because it's right or wrong. I don't know. I don't really understand. Michael Oren says it needs to be fixed, but he doesn't like the fix. They campaigned on it. They won. But I can't believe the number of Americans lining up to tell Israel what to do with their Supreme Court when in this country they want to pack the court by expanding the court. It's just simply mind-boggling. It's also maddening that the media doesn't cover its own consistency here, Senator.
Well, I mean, Hugh, unfortunately, it's of a piece with where liberal Democrats in this country have trended for a long time, going back 30 or 40 years. I mean, support for Israel used to be strongly bipartisan. But, you know, going back 30 years, really to the beginning of the Oslo process, support among Democrats for Israel simply declined. There's no two ways about it. A recent Gallup poll shows that a plurality of Democrats are now more sympathetic to the Palestinians than they are to the Israelis. By contrast, Republicans and independents are more supportive than Israel than ever. How that manifests itself comes out in different ways, but this is one example of it, is this double standard that liberals have always applied to Israel. You know, they'll criticize the Israeli government's judicial reform bill at the same time you say they're trying to pack the Supreme Court. They criticize the Israeli government because they have protesters showing up in the streets in large numbers. They don't criticize their bud Emmanuel Macron in France, who has protesters showing up in the streets in large numbers.
That's so well put.
The same thing at the United Nations.
Yeah. Now, let me conclude with Republican politics, Senator, because as I said at the beginning, you're on good terms with everyone. You're in Switzerland. You've done events for Ron DeSantis. I don't know if you've been with Chris Sununu in New Hampshire, but you're good friends with Glenn Youngkin, and one of your best pals is Mike Pompeo, and the former president gets along. You get along with them all. What do you want them to read, besides Only the Strong, your new book? What do you want them to be aware of as the most pressing set of issues they need to be addressing to our primary electorate in the Republican primary?
Well, Hugh, I'm very glad that you put a plug in for Only the Strong. I would recommend that they read that if they want to hear the 100 years of failures of progressive foreign policy and also a blueprint for how we can help rebuild American power and restore our economic and our military primacy in the world. I think there's no better guide for the future than understanding more about the past. So I'm a reader of biographies and histories myself. If you understand how great statesmen have faced similar problems in the past, you can understand how it got in the future. Any of the books you and Larry Arnn have been talking about in your Churchill series on Churchill as writer over the last 6 months would be a fantastic read for any of these people who are seeking to lead our nation. I'd also recommend, if you want something more contemporary, Benjamin Netanyahu's memoirs.
Oh, yes.
About how to be a clear, consistent leader of passion and conviction, to speak to the moral sense of public opinion, to the vital national interest that leaders see for their nations. I just think understanding how our leaders in similar situations have handled challenges helps any leader tackle challenge today. Because, of course, that's a fundamental premise of conservatism, is that you and I are no different from our founding fathers, or no different from the people we read about in Jesus' time, or no different from the Israelites who were held in captivity in Egypt. I mean, human nature is the same. It's unchanging. It faces the same challenges today that it did 4,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, or 200 years ago. And that's why we can learn from history.
Last and quick question, Senator. You've been to the Middle East, and you've gone as a soldier and transported soldier way, and you've gone as a sitting senator. Which is the better way to travel to the Middle East?
Not being packed into an aircraft with 60 pounds of kit and a rifle and a helmet. with the rest of your battalion, I'd say is probably a little more comfortable. However you get there, I've gotten there a lot of different ways, but traveling with the full battalion of infantry soldiers is a little tight quarters.
I was just thinking about this week. The guy was on a Codel to Israel, and I'll bet you that the transportation, the lodging was just a bit different between when Senator Cotton went to Iraq with the 101st Airborne or to Afghanistan and when he went to Israel this past month. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back. Thank you, Senator Cotton.